Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Independent Truckers right here, the Truckers Independent Broadcasting Network. Looks like we got full crew in here except for Amanda, but that's all right. And our guest here tonight, Officer Brent Hoover. Brent, how are you doing today? Oh yeah, man. I think it's been cold for everybody across, well, at least on the East Coast, North and South. I even heard rumors about snow in Florida, man, up there in the Panhandle. Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen places down there in Georgia where people were crossing bridges. It was nothing but taillights and headlights spinning around in circles. It's like, oh yeah, there you go. That was a hell of a ride. All the way across the. No, no, go ahead. Are you? Again? Oh wait, that's not right. Oh, I'm gonna fix it. We'll just keep rolling until now. They should hear you just fine.
Do what?
So now they should be hearing you just fine. Oh
Oh, okay.
crap!
All right. Go ahead, Brent.
Well, the big question is the warning devices, and I kind of had to chuckle that they're doing a study on that, but yet really, they're wanting to know the impacts of whether or not using the mercy triangles or if they're being seen and all of that. So my big thing is, um, you look at how often are they being used? Are they being used properly? Are they being used per the regulation? Are drivers knowing when to get those out and when not to get those out? I think is the biggest thing on this.
Well, and I'd also sent you a second article through Landline about they were trying to put them on for autonomous trucks, and I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that. They were trying to get a waiver and exemption against that.
Well, I've not really had it much firsthand experience with the autonomous trucks, but then it's kind of like anything else. If it's automated, it's probably going to break down, and if it breaks down, if there's nobody with the truck, who's going to be placing those emergency devices, or is it like caravanning situations where you may have a driver in the lead and then got another truck that's caravanning along with it. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with, and especially how things advance with the new administration in the lead. That'll be for sure.
Well, and I've personally, my belief is this is what they're calling platooning with they're running Wi-Fi with two or three trucks. You got a lead driver that's going to be responsible, how is that lead driver going to know if one of those other two trucks, or even one truck, how's he going to know if it breaks down?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure there'll be ways that'll indicate just like anything else. But you know, you look at unfortunate situation of losing a steer tire traveling 60, 65 miles an hour down the road. You know, I mean, yeah, you lose something like that, and boom, there it goes.
I mean, I feel this is totally unsafe. I really do in a lot of aspects. I know down in Allie's neck of the woods, they're running autonomous trucks right now. That
Oh
was another
wow.
question. This is another question I was going to ask you. So, if a law official wants that truck to stop, he has to call somebody, and they have to get that truck pulled over, and then he can do his inspection. I think you and I might have talked about this once before, but how are you going to feel about all this?
Well, I know they've been pushing a lot on the enforcement side that um, basically a lot of this will be. I don't want to say exempt because that's too much of a blanketed term, but it it would take something that if the truck goes by and tire chunks are flying or losing its load or something like that. But and and like I said, I'm kind of in an area where we're pretty rural yet, so we don't have anything. So I've not really been exposed. But you're exactly right. If it's like if you see something go by, you got to kind of catch up to it and get a phone number and hey, this truck needs to be stopped for this or this reason, and then just see how it goes
Well, and
that way.
the whole theory behind my thinking is like this. We'll go with the scenario you just described, especially if it's someone hauling steel. You're going to have to make a phone call to get the truck stopped. Meanwhile, how much of that product's going to come off that flatbed, and how many people are going to get injured?
Exactly. Exactly.
And you know as well as I do on a steel hauling, you're supposed to check your straps or your chains about every 2 or 3 hours.
Yep. Yep. Exactly right. So, and I think that's why a lot of them I've seen are just hauling the dry van stuff. You know, slam the doors and call her good and send her down the road. So it'll be very scary whenever they start to transition to other type of loads and stuff like that. And again, like with the weather we're having, today was a perfect example. They weren't really calling for anything, but we got some patches of some, pretty good snow showers. Didn't amount to much as far as accumulation, but roadways changed real quickly, in the matter of 30, 40 minutes. It went from dry open interstate to we had multiple crashes and several trucks jackknifed and stuff like that. So yeah, how do you take that autonomous truck and get it to slow down or do whatever? It it'll be interesting.
Well, they got
Well, and
their vehicle to vehicle program that they want to get started where things like that happen that it can read from vehicle to vehicle to indicate that traffic is stopped ahead so it can have time enough to react and things like that. But the problem is too many cars, I mean millions and millions of cars on the roadway today aren't equipped with that kind of technology. So that would be like decades down the road before every car on the road has that kind of technology in order to prevent that sort of thing from happening. But as you were talking earlier about inspections, I'm sitting there thinking, how dangerous could it be for an officer to do an inspection? Let's say you see brake smoking on this thing. You think, well, they must be out of adjustment. So you get the thing stopped. You're in a nice area, pulled off to the side. You take the time to chalk the wheels because that's what officers do when they know they're going to climb underneath the vehicle, right? but you don't know if that thing's going to just engage and pull away on you. You have no way of knowing if that thing. There's no shut off, right? There's no means to keep that thing from rolling away other than chalking the wheels. And I know by experience, you can run over chalks in a heartbeat. They're just they'll prevent it from rolling, but if somebody engages a vehicle, it'll run over that chalk and squash it. I mean,
Oh yeah, that's a very valid point, and that's why when it comes to the inspection side, they're like, how are inspections of these things going to go down? And I know a few months back I was reading their one company was oh they're real like basically any autonomous truck that was going to go out, they were like doing a basically a up down full annual inspection on it. I mean, they were checking and going over everything to basically say, hey, this truck has gotten extra scrutiny to ensure that that's safer than the average truck that's out there on the road. So, and yeah, when it comes to that, in that situation, if there's not a driver there, I know I'm personally not going to go underneath it. Not not unless there's something that can show me with 100% that hey, this truck is shut down and it's not going to go anywhere. So that's and then we kind
exactly.
of joked about it when we first heard rumors of that stuff. We're like, okay, we get it with an issue. How are you going to tell the computer to drive into the barn?
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's kind
Well,
of
that's
rough
what
too.
Wi-Fi's for. That's what Wi-Fi's for, Brent.
exactly. Can I pull up an app on my phone and I can control it like a, you know, 80,000 pound RC car and just pull it in myself? And
But I,
but
I'd
no, it.
imagine, I'd imagine, like in factories and stuff, they've got what they call a lockout, right? You go get a lock and you disengage the mechanisms and you put a lock on it so it can't be re-engaged. And I'd imagine that's what they'd have to engineer. Is there's a way you can disconnect those batteries or something where you can lock it out before doing an inspection, therefore it can't take off on you. I just couldn't imagine they'd expect officers to climb underneath a vehicle like that without a human that you can communicate with and know that that thing's not going to roll away while you're under because I'm sure being under a truck, you've seen it before, man. Them slack adjusters and stuff aren't high enough off the ground. They'll be tearing into your chest or body somewhere, you know.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely right. Which hopefully they'd be fancy enough they'd have disc brakes so they wouldn't have them slack adjusters hanging down.
That'd be
But
nice.
no, yeah, that's and like I said, everything I've heard them talking about autonomous trucks, they're like at the bare minimum like a level 3, and other than that, not even like, hey, don't mess with them unless you see something that's major, major, major. So yeah, is next few years it's definitely going to get interesting to see how they do that.
Well, and about a year ago, year and a half ago, we had U.S. Representative Mike Collins on the show from the Transportation Committee, and he brought. I keep coming back to this one specific point that he brought up to the FMCSA in one of their meetings. They're coming out with this electronics faster than they can produce parts for everything. So if something goes down on one of Mike's trucks, which he has 100 of them in Jackson, Georgia, and it's taken him anywhere from 30 to 45 days to get the part, he's got to part the unit. He's got no choice. So now here's going to be my question. You've got a truck rolls up on a scale, it's out of service for whatever reason. They've got to order a part. How are they going to get that truck off that scale property?
Yeah, probably just have to tow it, and just like they would anything else out of service that's not able to be fixed, just tow it from the lot there.
They'll send an
And
autonomous
and
tow truck for
really, like you were saying, some of this technology is moving a lot quicker, and it almost just comes down to like our road infrastructure and stuff like that's just not in place. I mean, it would be kind of like some of these bigger cities where they got their own lanes for if you're going to go from one side of the city to the other and not going to be exiting in the middle, you can get on those fast paced lanes and then not be too swamped with the more in and out traffic. So, you know, it's almost they're kind of putting the big truck in front of the roadway h- cart before the horse.
Yeah. Kinda like them
And
Well, and see,
ELDs,
that's
right?
that's kind of what I felt like they did with the ELDs as well. They put the cart in front of the horse.
yeah, yep, almost.
And you and I have talked about that several times.
Oh yeah,
uh, I just I feel what's going on is maybe I'm wrong, but I think somebody's trying to grow up too quick.
yep, yep. Before stopping and saying, "Well, why are we losing drivers?" Instead of saying, "Well, let's develop a technology to replace." Well, why don't you slow down and say, "Well, why don't we get to the bottom of why we're losing drivers?"
They no longer
Let's
want a
ask those
human.
questions and look at that kind of thing.
So you bring that up, and that's one of my key issues about autonomy is the fact that drivers have been set up for failure from the beginning. I mean, how long has it been that parking has been an issue? We have 11-to-1 ratio for parking, right? We have one parking space for every 11 trucks out there. And they've known this for decades and not fixed this for decades, leaving drivers twisted in the wind. They had us on a failed hours of service file rules. And as far as I'm concerned, the hours of service rules they have now are still failed. Many drivers complain about them, and they put the ELD out there to keep them enforced to enforce the law on them, while at the same time recognizing that the hours of service rules are flawed. And when I brought that up with the FMCSA, they said, "Well, we'll fix the hours of service rules after the ELD." I'm like, why would you not fix the hours of service rules first? That only makes sense, right? Why would you set people up for failure? But that's what they did.
Yep. Oh,
Well, and even the former our former Attorney General Curtis Hill, he even sent a letter off to the FMCSA asking them to rethink it, and they didn't even want to hear it.
No, they wanted that ELD in place, but it's crazy. And it just the thing of it is, it doesn't work. A lot of drivers are stuck out there because it doesn't work. They get trapped in places where they're parking where they're not allowed to park. Then they're getting ticketed for it because of the ELD. An unforeseen consequence was truck stop said, "Hey, parking's limited. It's scarce. You need it, so we're going to charge you $20 a night for it." And the trucking companies won't compensate the drivers for it.
Well, my question is, why don't y'all pull over people that brought like the big truck drivers? That was a question that was wanted to be relayed to you.
what was it again?
My dad wanted me to ask. He's a truck driver as well. He said, "Why don't y'all pull over cars that bright light them?"
That bright light. Oh, like failure to dim.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we do when we catch it. Just like everybody wants to come up to me and go, "Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" Well, why don't you come right along with me and shift and see what we're doing? That everybody wants to criticize, but then they're not. So we do what we can when we can.
Yeah. I'm sorry if
And
I came off that.
same thing with all these guys putting these big off-road light bars and all these off-road lights on their trucks, acting like they're driving across the Sahara Desert at night, but yet,
Yeah.
so
No,
it it just
Brandon's a pretty good guy. Brandon, he was asking a question in general. That's all.
And I'm
no,
sorry if it came off as me being disrespectful, criticizing. That's not me at all. If anything, I thank you for what you do, and you're underpaid and underappreciated. There's too much hate in the world for police officers. Um,
No, and it just and and again, it's kind of like, you look how many trucks are out there, and yeah, you guys are out there on the road 11, 12 hours a day, and you guys do see a lot. And but then you see a lot less of us out there. So it just we try to enforce and try to work on that stuff when we can. So, just to reassure people that just because they don't necessarily see it doesn't mean that we're not taking enforcement action on it when we can.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's the thing of it is, and especially with social media and everything else, people so quick to jump on us and criticize and everything else. And it's like, folks, we've got limited numbers just like everybody else, so we're doing what we're doing. Just because you don't see it, that instant gratification of seeing it done right away, they just assume that we're not, and
Yeah.
that's not the
I'm sorry. That
case.
was kind of a smart question. I apologize.
It's all right. It's all
No,
right.
I mean, if it's any consideration, I was just coming into Minnesota one night, and I had a four wheeler cut me off right before the 500 feet limit. Next thing I know, here come a car flying out of nowhere, and it was a Minnesota State Trooper, and I just moved over in the left lane, and he got who he wanted, and I know what he got him for, because the guy
Absolutely.
I was doing about 67, 68. The guy wasn't doing much faster than I am, but he got me, but he passed me and came over before that 500-foot cutoff. And I knew right then and there what was on his mind.
And it does it. It's and I love when I do get to see that stuff, because then I can get take that enforcement action and help help those drivers out. Because and too, with these dash cams, um getting to see everything that goes on. And yeah, you know if it's one of those deals, if there was enough of us out that we could be every 3 miles on the interstate, then people would be griping there's too many of us out there pinching everybody. So
Hey, I remember those days. I remember when every scale house on God's green earth was open. It's like, oh man, how many times I got to stop at one of these things? It's so good to
Yep.
stay here.
Yep.
I meant to ask
So
you about that, Brent. Why do I see a lot less activity at the scale houses these days?
same thing with the driver shortage. We're like, especially in Indiana, most of our scales facilities are run by our civilian motor carrier inspectors, and the vast majority, like anything else, especially with state police right now, we've got more guys retiring than we do hiring and coming on. So we just had a hiring process for motor carrier inspectors that would be running the scale facilities across the state. We had openings we were hoping to hire 20 and barely got six for around the state.
Wow.
So just because, again, if somebody's young and they look at, well, do I want to be a civilian scale inspector or do I want to be a police officer? They'll go the route of the police officer. Or one of our best guys, he was a friend of mine that he had retired and still wanted to work and do something. I said, "What? Have you ever thought about being a motor carrier inspector?" Yeah, way back when. But and shoot, he's getting ready to go on his 10th year with us. So it's like anything else. Um, between facilities aging, equipment aging and breaking. And I know there for a long time, our sign, the way it lit up, they're like, they don't make those light bulbs for that anymore. It's like, okay, then give us a flip sign, and they're like, huh? we're like, we'll pull
you,
out there and flip the sign manually, like, so yeah,
I'll
between
never
technology
go
and
ahead.
staffing.
I'll never forget back in the '90s. I was driving an OR 600 Mac. I was running a flatbed, and I stopped at the Richmond scales, and that girl come out and do a DOT check on me. And she said, "Well, wait a minute. I keep forgetting this is a '76." She, she started having to look things up because the truck was so old, and she wanted to make sure she got the right notifications on the ticket, which was basically a fix-it ticket. As soon as I
Yeah.
got back to the yard, they took care of it. And all it was that gasket that sits on top of the fuel tanks.
Oh
It's
yeah.
but it squeezed out a little bit, and it was starting to leak a little bit of fuel out. And it really wasn't worth getting. It just squeezed out. It's all it did. It was a rubber one, and it started squishing out. So when I got back to, she gave me a fix-it ticket. So when I got back to Youngstown, they just replaced it, and that was the end of it. But she was starting to have to look things up in the book. Says I keep forgetting this is a '76.
Oh, I know. I had a when I first started, I stopped an older gentleman, and he had, what was this, like a 70 Kenworth cab over, and it didn't have brakes on the front axle. And I just starting, and I looked in there, and I'm like, something don't look right. I looked at it again. I'm like, hell, this thing don't have any brakes on the front axle. So of course I got all excited, went and grabbed my book, flipped the page, and I was like, oh, it's exempt for the age. And but yeah, yeah, not now anymore. If we see a truck older than a 2000, we get all excited.
Well, gee, I'm glad I got rid of my 2009 then.
Uh,
I hate to get rid of that truck. I really love that truck.
yeah,
But
no,
then
because
you saw what I got too.
oh
So
yeah, oh yeah.
it just doesn't have the room in it for me. I'll be honest with you. They just did not put the room in these 680s.
Oh
They
really?
really did. Yeah. Well, I mean, look what I had, a studio sleeper, and
Yeah.
then I go down to a basic sleeper, and as far as I'm concerned, that bunk's so damn small. I got to get outside just to change my mind.
Oh gosh.
So, I mean, it's
Well,
got the basic comforts, but it just doesn't have the storage.
see, and that's something else. These truck manufacturers, they're like, "Oh, look at this, look at that," and it's like, why don't you get real drivers in there instead of engineers and ask them where they want stuff?
I mean, you take a look at Mac's newest truck coming out, their Anthem. They're advertising they can put 1,900 golf balls or ping pong balls for storage.
How often are you
It's
gonna use
like
it for that?
I don't store 19. I know, John. I don't
But
store
I'm just,
1900 ping pong balls.
well, they did also advertise you could store 20 cases of beer.
You're not allowed to have those in the truck. Come on.
Not that I know we're not advocating here, Brent. I'm just telling you what they said at Mac.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Bubba the Wonder Trucker. Yeehaw, that's for me.
Of course, I already know what Brent's answer to all that is. But Brent, I'd like to introduce you to Amanda. She's in here late tonight. She's the one I was telling you about. Went for the medical field to the driving. Today was actually her last day of training.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So
She's
I'll
new
let
new
you
to
have a few
trucking,
words with Amanda.
so you got to be gentle with her there, Brent.
What's
I'm
that?
sorry.
I said she's new to trucking, so you just have to be gentle with her.
Oh, I'm a gentle bear. I won't.
Kid gloves, Brent. Kid gloves. Go ahead, Amanda.
How are you?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. So today was your last day of training. Like, with a trainer or
Yeah,
last day
so
training?
they had me in training. I was 2.5 weeks OTR, and they've got me a week local.
Okay, so what are you focusing on? Local or you want to do the over the road for a while?
Well, I thought I was gonna be okay with doing over the road. I'm gonna have to discuss that with Sean. um,
Do you know where Cabbage Mountain is, Brent?
No, no, I don't.
It's on 84 out in Oregon. It's a 6% grade for 4 miles. And I offered for Amanda to get on Discord, and I had my phone set up so she could watch me go down the mountain, and she wanted no part of it.
well,
I suggested the 4th of July mountain in Montana. It's a 6% grade for 5 miles, and well, the F bomb came out of her mouth.
So so she'll be flat landing for a while then.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing
But I
wrong with
will,
that.
but I will say, I do have to say thank you for Indiana keeping their roads very clear for me during my first winter season.
Well, that's good. That's good. And speaking of roads, I don't know if you guys know about this website or not, but 511.in.org. It's
No, I didn't know about that.
yeah. But if you type in 511in.org, and other states will be, of course, 511 and then the abbreviation for the state. But it shows the full map of the state, road conditions, truck conditions, like if there's anything that's popped up. Um, and then during these winter, it'll show like snowplow locations and even cameras and stuff on snowplows and different cameras. So if you're sitting somewhere and say you're trying to get from St. Louis to Columbus, Ohio, and you go, well, I wonder how Indiana's looking. You can go to that website or pull it up on your phone, and then you can be able to look at those different cameras and see what's going on and any backups and stuff like that. So
Oh,
you
that's pretty cool. I'm glad you told us about
That's
that.
nice.
yeah.
We need to get whoever decided they were going to create that to come on down to Texas and talk to our folks.
Well, wait a minute. Is this a Federal Highway Administration thing?
What's that?
Is this a Federal Highway Administration? Is that who hosts this?
No, I don't know. I think it's just kind of a partnership between states, maybe. But I noticed, like, I was out in Nebraska a couple weeks ago helping out with a class, and I noticed Nebraska had the similar web service to where you could see roadway conditions and different things. So
So
not, I'm not sure.
what was that
Maybe they got some
enforced?
federal funding to put it together. I don't know, but
What was
pretty
that
good.
Well,
website?
actually,
Pretty
the
good tool.
FMCSA did allow Ohio and Indiana a certain amount of money for a highway for access across over 70, but they claimed it was going to be the start for the autonomous trucks. So
Well,
maybe they decided to put cameras in.
at that I don't know. I knew there was something between Ohio and Indiana that on that part of the state that they were talking about that, but
Yeah, they were
I don't
allowed
know
$10
anything.
million. dollars.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, that was just a couple years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've
Mayor,
heard
yeah,
something about it.
Mayor Pete come up with that one. If you know who I'm talking about,
Oh yeah, that's why I chuckled.
the only man I know that got bailed out because of dominoes. I won't get started on Mayor Pete right now. Um, so Amanda, you told me earlier you had a couple questions you'd like to ask Brent.
um, well, I mean, I'm not for sure like how I'm not really for sure how it works as far as like state wise, but I know that, a lot of changes are coming, but I don't know exactly what that entails for everybody for um, the next, I guess you could say the next 4 years. But as far as, policing and the strictness on each party, whether it be, and I like to say whether regular civilian vehicles or commercial vehicles.
Well, the next 4 years definitely going to be interesting because I know if it was like the first 4 years we had with Trump, it did seem like a lot of that stuff got either um, kind of put on hold, or they had to really reevaluate things and try to reduce some of the regulations. So, or as many new regulations. So it'll definitely be interesting. I've not heard of anything since we're just only about 3 or 4 days into it, but I would assume that maybe not as many strict things coming. But that's just me speculating. But and really as far as the enforcement, um it'll be pretty well the same as it's always been for us as far as roadside inspections and what we're looking for and free trips and things like that. So
So how is it? Because I had this happen to me actually. Um, the leniency when it comes down to, say, for instance, you're driving down the road as commercial vehicle. I lost my trailer lights, and I had the trailer lights when I started the trip because I did the typical pre-trip and everything, and then I lost my trailer lights. Uh, I had to go about 50 to 70 miles to find the nearest place that the company I'm with would allow us to go to have our trailer fixed. It seems like I heard more and more about there's like really not any leniency towards that.
yeah, depending on what light it is, and if it's a required light, like a brake lights, turn signals, or running lights at night. Yeah,
Uh,
once if you get stopped and an inspection's done and it's determined that you're out of service, technically you are out of service there until that is fixed or repaired. So, um, in a case, we will try to escort you off the interstate or park, get you somewhere parked safely. But yeah, unfortunately, with the out of service, it is as it is, and it's wherever we get you closest parked. Now, if it's one of those deals you're running down the road and it's not a required light, or let's say it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and you say, "Hey, I do have brake lights. I've got turn signals, but my running lights aren't working." Well, that would be just a violation, but you would be allowed to continue to get those repaired. So it is some things depending on when it is. If it's an out of service, there's more leniency as far as can you go somewhere to get it fixed, or is it an out of service where you sit type thing.
okay.
And one thing they added a couple years ago to kind of expand on this was like say a pigtail comes unplugged. Well, they made it to where if we determine it's just a pigtail unplugged and we have the driver plug the pigtail back in and the lights are working, it's only considered one violation. Where several years ago, before they had kind of rewritten that and made it clear. Technically, an inspector could go up, your marker lights are out, your turn signals are out, your four ways are out, your brake lights, and sit there and write four or five different violations, to where now it's just nope, it's just the one. And then after you plug it in and we did check the lights and they work, then it's documented as such. So that's kind of one thing to kind of help keep from writing too many violations, or getting those inspectors that are going to write anything and everything they run across. So
Okay.
Well, and let me say this: I think part of the problem I've noticed, Brand, is with these newer trailers. They got the newer style plug-in. They're like plug and plays versus
hmm
the old style. And I've actually broke a couple of those. Now you can get them at a truck stop for 15 or 20 bucks, but I think a lot of that newer stuff coming out, it's not holding up like the older stuff is.
oh yeah, I know one company spent 15, hundreds of dollars on these shims to, to shim, you know, into there to prevent them, and Velcro to go around them and different things. And yeah, that's just it. When they used to be cast metal and good,
Hmm.
now everything's plastic, and then the plug, the pigtail plugs are all plastic, and we all know how well plastic loves -20 degrees.
Well, I will tell you this much: the plastic ones on my pigtail disappeared.
Oh,
I went to metal.
they just fell off at a truck stop. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
So I mean, I just dropped the 30 bucks and I changed them out myself.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with that plastic crap.
Yep. Don't blame me there.
So you got anything else, Amanda?
I'm trying to think, but I can't concentrate while I got my grandson over here smacking around this box. It's like rattling in my head.
So so Amanda, what do you so you said, what type of loads are you doing right now? You just doing drive in stuff?
Yeah, it's driving. I really, because it's a lot with like a hazmat or tanker or any of those. I'm trying to just kind of get used to the things that you got to do with the drive-in before I go any further, because I'm taking baby steps.
Hey, and
As Sean says, the baby steps, because there's no way I'm baby stepping over that mountain.
no, and that's good. I mean, learn as much as you can, ask questions. You know, get you a little green book for with the federal regulations, and you know, spend some downtime and kind of read through some of the regulations, and what you need to be doing on your pre-trips, and really focus on them pre-trips. And sounds like you've got a good head on your shoulders, so I'll
Thank
be
you.
rooting for you.
Thank you. I'm definitely gonna enjoy it. Definitely different than the medical field, that's for sure. Uh,
Yeah, what if you don't mind me asking, what area of medical field did you come out of?
so I was a medical assistant slash phlebotomist for 15 years.
Ah,
Yeah.
the good old phlebotomist. I had a lady draw my blood a couple years ago. I swore she pulled that needle out of a bottom of tackle box and pulled it out sideways when she took that needle out. Oh, and I've
Do you
got the
want to
biggest.
do you want to relive moment, Brent? Because that's what Allie does now.
Oh, that's what Ellie does now. Uh oh,
hmm
no thanks, no thanks. I'm
I
thinking,
think
I'm thinking she knew I was a trooper, and maybe a trooper wrote her a ticket and she was taking it out on me or something. But I about, I
Fun
about
fact.
cried.
I'll keep on saying this, and I'm proud to say it. I've never gotten pulled over except when I was, I want to say 16. I just got my license, I had an old beat up 2004 Ford Escape, and I had a license plate out, light out, and I had no idea. I still had one, just not the other, but no ticket.
Man, was it a city or county or?
Oh, it's a small little town, and those
Ah,
police
there we
officers, like I
go.
said, I
There
respect
we
y'all
go.
100%, but that one was a douchebag.
Well, well, when you said
Where,
you had one and you had the other, I thought that has to be a bored city cop.
yeah,
Yeah.
her town's just probably a little bit bigger than Terre Haute, Brent.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Allie, you can always come drive in Dallas if you want to.
Oh
Hell
gosh.
no, I'm staying fuck away from Dallas. Excuse my language.
I mean, you could do
So,
like I did and drive down the road and get pulled over by a motorcycle cop that was off of his motorcycle out in the middle of the road and him just wave you in.
Oh no, I think I'm good.
so Brent, here's a question I wanted to ask,
Yes.
and I think it's going to end up going to our new governor, if you're familiar with his history. Um, I want to know why I have to pay $150 to get my hazmat endorsement because I have to be fingerprinted, but yet though I can go to your post and have it done for free.
That is a really good question. And it'd be really interesting to see what happens with stuff like that. Because yeah, and two, with the amount of live scan fingerprinting like stuff that's out there, I think these private places have gotten a little extreme. So,
Well, I mean, like where I was raised at in Clay City, we used to have a BMV. Well, Daniels had all that consolidated into bigger places. It used to take me only maybe 20, 25 minutes. I'd go in town, I'd get my license, I'd go home. Now I have to go to Brazil. Well, I used to. Now I got to go somewhere else. But I'd go to Brazil, get my license. Then if I want my hazmat, I got to drive to Terre Haute. And then I got to wait 3 weeks for my license to come in the mail.
oh, I know it. I made
And
that
then
mistake.
meanwhile, they give you this piece of paper. It don't have your picture on it, but it's got your info. And I got stopped by a Michigan State Trooper, and he wanted to know what the hell that was I gave him. And I told him that's what the BMV gave me, and he almost wouldn't accept it.
He doesn't have a choice. He has to.
I I made that mistake. I renewed my CDL and got that piece of paper and went to the airport 2 days later to fly on a plane, and they about strip searched me because I didn't have a hard copy. And I'm like, "That's what my BMV gave me," and they're like, "Well, we can't accept this." So yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, I got
Well,
a
I
well, I
mean,
got
there's a big difference because, like, I have to go to Walmart to get some of the things I need. They ask for ID, they won't accept it because it doesn't have your picture on it.
well. Speaking of search, I got a question for you. So,
Uh huh.
does an officer have to have a valid reason to search your personal belongings, search your car, search your body, etc., etc.?
All right. Um, so yes, in your personal car, we have to have probable cause. So, first for a personal vehicle, we have to have, you've committed a traffic infraction or something like that, and then probable cause that leads us further to warrant the search.
Okay.
Now, we jump over to because we've gotten a lot of questions on semis, like you got set up, he's got his paper, he's got his personal bag, stuff like that. The questions that we typically get are, okay, I get stopped for an inspection. At what point are you inspecting? And at what point are you, searching?
Mhm.
So there's different things. When we hop up on the driver's door, there's gauges, steering wheel, fire extinguishers, triangles. Um, And then in extreme cases, the sizes, sleepers, and different things. There's different things that we are looking for and inspecting, but when it comes to actually physically searching said bags and stuff, we've got to have probable cause to articulate that, yes, when I was conducting my inspection, I went up to check the gauges, looked down, saw what appeared to be a burnt marijuana roach, smelt marijuana, and then, it turned into a drug investigation with probable cause to search and go from there. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, yes, us as
Well,
officers, inspectors, we got to have PC if we're doing searches like that. Now, if we're just doing our normal course of the inspection, that is different, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answered your question.
in a way, it kind of did. My friend, she's not a truck driver. She was in a personal vehicle. And she just got pulled over. She had a brake light out. Well, that officer pulled her over, and she doesn't smoke. She doesn't do all that. I know for a fact. I've known her for years. Um, she didn't have any kind of anything bad in her car, but the officer wanted us. They called a female officer to check her body. They went through her purse, went through her entire car just because of a traffic stop. She called me freaking out. She's like, I didn't do nothing wrong. I just got pulled over because my brake light is out. Don't you have to have a warrant before you search?
Not on a traffic stop like that. You just have to have that probable cause.
Okay.
Um, Now, a warrant in a house, there's different things when it comes to um, open view. If and a lot of times cars different from houses because um, the cars obviously meant to move up and down the road can be easily moved and that type stuff where a house is fixed and you got a little bit more expected privacy. So there's all sorts of legal things, but basically the officers would have to have some sort of probable cause. Did they smell something? Did they see something? And be able to articulate that.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings me up to an interesting question I've always heard a myth about, Brent. Let's
Hmm.
stick with open. Let's stick with search and seizures. Um, I've always heard that if you had your curtains closed, and you kind of answered this, if I had my bunk curtains closed, technically you could not look back there. But since it's open view, the officer already sees it, so naturally, human instinct's going to be to look around in there anyway.
Yeah, and something that the officer thinks about is officer safety. So more so, and just like um, keeping your hands where we can see them, and you know, as far as and I do this if the curtains are closed, and a lot of times I'll gauge the response of the driver. Hey, are you by yourself? Are you in with a team? Or what's going on here? Or no, I'm by myself. Okay, indications. I look, but I may just open it just to make sure. Hey, there's nobody in there. Um, One that's going to do me harm. Two, the of course the human trafficking and different things, and two, what a lot of people need to understand too is there is a regulation that if um, you're operating a vehicle and the commercial motor vehicle and you have a passenger, technically they have to have authorization from the company to be
Right.
in that vehicle. So so yeah, the quick precursionary sweep to make sure nobody's back there um, it differs a whole lot than is there drugs or whatever else. So there's different ways, and depending on which way it goes, we've got could you know it's a big thing. Opening the curtain, yep, nobody's back there. Then, oh, here's your duffel bag, and I'm going to lift your bunk and look underneath your pillow and, you know, see what kind of beverages you got in your refrigerator and all this other stuff. So,
Well, if you find a beer, I'll split one up with you. But the
Mm,
last question I do have, and I'm doing this for Amanda, when because this is something I've never talked to her about. So, what's the myth on having white sheets in your bunk?
so, it's exactly that. It's a myth, and I'm sure that what got this started was a few years ago. Some officer somewhere asked the driver if his bed was made. And then, of course, at the time I was doing a lot of the social media stuff, and it just blew up my feed. Guys, all the extreme. And so it just says in the regulation you have to have adequate bedding, adequate bedding. And then, of course, the white sheet thing was, well, back in the day, drivers would be the first ones onto fatal crash scenes, so they need a white sheet to cover up the deceased. So that's where that rumor got started. But the actual regulation just states adequate bedding. So technically, if you get in a truck and you're claiming sleeper berth time, and we look back there and it's just a bare mattress, how are you getting adequate sleep on just a bare mattress? So I've never taken it that far. The only time I really threw the BS flag was when that cab was so full of trash and junk, and the sleeper bed was full of trash and junk, and he tried to claim that he slept on that. I was like, between holding down vomit and, yeah, which that wasn't the only thing wrong with the truck, but
I can't imagine what you've seen, Brent.
oh my gosh.
Well, and
But
I remember my dad talking about that, and they was carrying about they had to carry white sheets because they could use them also for you could cut them into strips if need be
yeah,
because they were
yes,
claiming something about the dye and the other types of sheets.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
body
So
body
I,
body
I,
bacteria
I'm sure glad that
yeah.
state trooper never looked when I was carrying black satin sheets, but that's another story.
uh,
That's when I was married.
so,
We'll
so
delete
tell
that
me,
off the conversation.
tell me, Brent, and when, because I know that up top they have on the top bunk they have the belts, right?
yeah,
Um,
that's a good question.
I was in the, I was actually in the truck with my trainer. Sorry, I was in the truck with my trainer, and she told me that I was able to sleep on top and be able to buckle myself in while she's driving down the road. Is that uh I guess you could say, is that a safe, would that be like considered safety or anything? I mean,
Yes, yes. So, when you dive into the regulations, that netting is, yeah, you buckle that netting up there, and that's going to basically hold you into the bunk. Um, I did work a fatal crash. Gosh, I'm really showing my age when I was down in southern Indiana, and that's probably been 15 years ago. The driver went up under an overpass,
oh God.
and the driver was killed. And it wasn't till an hour or two later that the wrecker was pulling the truck out from underneath the uh, overpass, and they found the co-driver in the upper bunk. And he lived. He lived. He was had enough space, and he survived. But yeah, having that strapping up in there technically, you know, they've got to be fastened into that bunk when they're riding going down the road.
Wow.
And that's something to bring up too. Team drivers being being mindful that, hey, if you get stopped for an inspection, us because I had this a few months ago at the Terre Haute scales. Um, we try not to interfere if the co-driver's sleeping. We don't want to interfere with them because technically they're off duty. All we need to see is just their identification, their driver's license, because we've got to be able to pair that with the hours of service to see that, yep, who they've got in the back is who they're claiming as their co-driver. So if you are listening and you're driving teams, let your person know, hey, when I'm in the bunk, here's my license, here's my ID. So if we get stopped, us as the inspector, we don't physically necessarily need to see you. We don't want to be waking you up. We don't want to be interrupting your sleep, but we still need to be able to identify with a driver's license. So I had a gentleman trying to tell me that I didn't have to identify him and that, I was wrong. And he was from Canada. And I'm like, I'd like to see you try this stuff on the border. But finally got his license and convinced him. And then he explained that he got woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And that's why it was attitude. And I'm like, well, whatever, but we do need to see the identification. So if you are running a team, make that clear. Hey, here's my license if you need it, if we get stopped for an inspection or whatever. So
Nice to know. Very, very nice to know. Yeah, and I had a I had a point where I was on sleeper berth, and I was getting ready to go to sleep, but not quite there yet. I felt we were going in the mountains. I could feel it. My whole body just told me, "Hey, we're going. Get ready." And all I know is there was no way the first time I was going through, even though I was on sleeper berth, there was no way I was going to be able to sit in that back in the bunk. I had to get up in the front passenger seat and sit there and watch her go down it.
well, and so you need 10 hours off.
Wait.
Well, so with that being said, you can do 2 hours off duty in the passenger seat at either the beginning or the ending of that 8 hours in the sleeper berth.
Okay.
So, and that's a good example. Like, I was with talking to a team, and he was like, it takes me about an hour to calm down. Not necessarily calm down, but just to wind down and get ready for ready to go to bed. And
Right.
yeah, so you can count up to 2 hours in the passenger seat as off duty, and then just switch you over to sleeper berth when you go to lay down. So, yep, you can legally do that. So in your case, when you're getting ready to go down the mountain, you can sit in the passenger seat. And go, okay, we made it safe. Now I feel comfortable climbing the bunk. Go to bed. So,
Sean said that he was going to be nice to me. Didn't you, Sean?
How,
Said you're
how
going to
did
be
I
nice.
get thrown under the bus? Notice how they throw me under the bus around here, Brent?
oh, I know it. I know it.
He said the first one that he's going to take me down is Mount Eagle.
Hey, there you go. That's always fun.
Uh,
That's an
I've
easy
gone.
mountain. That's
Yeah,
like a hill.
it is. That's just straight down. I've driven past that a few times on vacation, and I watch the trucks that bypass the mandatory stop and go, we're not following, or we'll follow that truck. We're not going to get in front of him. So
yeah. I got to get past it. I got to get past it and be able to do it myself. But I keep saying I got to have somebody good enough to get me through it.
I mean, if
So,
I really wanted to be a jerk about it, I could always take her through the back roads of Pennsylvania, 8, 9% grades.
hey, there you go.
Yeah, but they're not
Huh.
long. They're
We're
only like a mile.
Yeah, yeah, they're only about a mile, but it'd be enough to get Amanda fired up.
But 11% for a mile is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used
Well,
to have to
Brent.
run down I used to have to run down old 30 and 422 and 322. Oh yeah, those were the good old days.
Oh, I did the fun Tennessee 109. Uh-huh.
Which I told you not to go down.
Yeah, that's about a narrow road and it's windy.
I I told you to throw that GPS away. 65 to Briley Parkway. Been just as simple. You could have saw the Grand Ole Opry, but no, you got out that Japanese slot machine.
Mm. I found out what it was like to be on the road for 2 weeks up in the northern states. And one of the things that I found out was the meanest truckers out there are the cattle haulers. I found that out really fast, and I found out they can blow your doors off.
You're giving away trucker secrets.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
mean though. They are very mean.
Impatient. They're just impatient. That's all. You're in their way.
Ugh.
Damn company
Yeah.
truck, 62 miles an hour, blocking the left lane again. Move over.
Oh, I made sure to move over. I found that one out real quick.
She wasn't around during the days of Montford.
Mm.
Brent, have you got legalized marijuana in Indiana?
thankfully no.
Oh,
Um, they are they're trying to push it, but we are fighting it because it's a slippery slope, and the states that have legalized it are seeing the negative sides of it. So thankfully, we do not.
so here in
Well,
Massachusetts, where I do the majority of my work, it used to be a day when if you were doing less than 75 miles an hour, you were just in the way. I mean, they were just blowing your doors off left and right. And law enforcement over here, they were pretty easy going with the speeding and stuff. In fact, I've had a lot of cops that passed me by like I was just sitting still. Um, Nowadays, since they legalized marijuana, I swear to God, it's true. Reed was right about this. Since they legalized marijuana, you got these 60-mile-an-hour travelers in the center lane and will not move.
Mhm.
These dispensaries, my God, they just fill up. There's one across the street where I fuel my truck, and it's constantly battles trying to get out of the parking lot because there's so many cars trying to get in and out of that dispensary. But yeah, I think I think you're right. What I'm seeing is there's a lot of negative repercussions for it. There's people. I'd be honest with you. I think they're driving down the road stoned.
Oh, absolutely. And driving down the road stoned, and the crashes and stuff. I think I think it's Colorado. I saw something like, oh gosh, they went from like 1,500 roadway fatalities a year to well over 3,000. Don't quote me on that, but
Jeez.
Wow.
just
Some people
because if you
claim.
well,
think about it,
Some people
and
claim
it
here's
that.
just
my thing on the whole thing, though, Brent. And Texas was actually doing this until Bush got to become governor, because there was two people actually legalized to smoke marijuana in the state of Texas.
Mhm.
The catch of it was they were under a doctor's prescription, and it was actually for their glaucoma. Now, under a doctor's prescription, I can understand this, and I don't have a problem with that. But the problem I have is, what are you doing with riding any type of vehicle down the highway?
exactly,
That's
exactly,
that's the problem I've got. If you're going to be
hmm
doing that under a doctor's care, you need to keep your ass home.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Crash your lazy boy into a tree, not your car.
There you go.
Yeah, they need to definitely step back and look at that scenario and figure out that it's actually wrong and very dangerous to allow it. And I know Texas is going to be probably one of the last states to even ever approve it, if they ever do.
Well, I don't know. We got Braun, and I don't think he's going to let that happen. Do you, Brent?
Um, I I don't know. I I need to do a little more research on his background and how he's voted and stuff.
Uh,
But Indiana, we've been pretty opposed to it, and especially the Indiana State Police, we've been greatly opposed to it as well. So
Well,
yeah.
I can tell you this much: Braun's did a lot. He's did a lot as a U.S. senator for women's rights in Indiana and protecting those rights. I know he helped John and I get the subcommittee put together on the mix sack, and he's actually a very level-headed man. He really is. But I mean, he just there's nothing. All I can say is the man's got plain common horse sense. So,
I follow pretty closely on TikTok one of the Indiana police officers also. He was an Indiana police officer. Yeah. His name was Kingery. He was a police officer, I believe, over in it's a little town outside of I want to say Indianapolis.
so has anybody got anything else for Brent? We're about 15 minutes over, and I don't want to keep him if he's got family plans.
No, I just want to say that we appreciate everything you do, and I know the past 4 years have been pretty hard, but hopefully the 4 years to come will be a little easier on y'all.
heck yeah, no, and like I said, I appreciate what you guys are doing. Once this country wakes up a little bit more and realizes that trucks are what move this country, you know, and I think especially during COVID, you know, everything
Mhm.
was panicking, shelves were bare and all this. And it's like, well, yeah, because trucks aren't running to bring this stuff to you. So
Yeah.
I appreciate everything you guys do. And everybody keep safe, stay warm, and definitely reach out if you got any questions.
You too.
Well, and again, thank you for coming on, Brent. I really appreciate it when you do, and as always, it's a pleasure having you on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, I'm going to get off here. You guys have a great evening
You
and be
too.
safe.
All right, you take care, bud.
All
We'll
righty.
be in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks. Good night.
Take care.
Good night.
So, John, we got a guest for you next week. I guess Peter from Canada is going to be joining us.
Oh, awesome.
So, if you want to get him a link out next week.
You
Oh yes, that's going to be fun. February 6th, John, Mr. Jackass will be on to explain why he's going to run for Kentucky State Rep.
Uh-huh. That's because he likes the punishment.
Well, yeah, I think he does too.
Hey, Peter. I see Peter just popped up. He just found out he's going
So,
to be
yeah,
there.
Peter, yeah, Peter, you going to be on here next week? Has he typed an answer yet?
No. I think Peter's a hunt and peck sort of typer. Takes him a second. He says, "Oh, really?
Oh,
Laugh out
okay.
loud." All right. So I guess yeah, we're like 10 minutes, 15 minutes over. So
So anyway, don't forget Monday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You got America Talks with John Grosvenor and James Toller. I'll be joining that show as James has an engagement he has to be at. Tuesday night it'll be the John and Bad Billy, and then Wednesday night we got the Common Sense Conservative with Chris, Todd, and John. And we'll be back next Thursday.
awesome. So that's our bit, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you got something out of it. Keep the greasy side down, the shiny side up, and between the lines, and safe travels wherever you may be going. And as always, be good. If you can't be good, well, be good at it. And we are gone.
Bye bye.